Welcome to another vegan bake-off. So, what makes a great cinnamon roll? To answer this question, we are going to compare recipes by 4 creators, diving deep into the ingredients, methods, and flavors of each bun. Our blind tasters are a team of a Michelin restaurant. Yeast dough is a tricky thing, but once you'll have the perfect recipe, you'll never need to look for another one. And we are here to find the one for you. Let's start by looking at the ingredients. The dough ingredients are pretty straightforward, but the key is in the details and proportions. There is flour in all 4 recipes, but Gaz Oakley's recipe stands out with the use of corn flour. Another thing that is different in Gaz's recipe is powdered sugar instead of granulated sugar. All recipes call for plant milk, but Sarah's recipe stands out with the use of water and aqua fava. Gaz doesn't use salt in his dough, and while all recipes feature plant butter, the proportions vary. When it comes to the filling, Gaz Oakley's recipe stands out with the use of dried cherries, as well as maple syrup instead of sugar, and almond butter instead of regular plant butter. Make It Dairy-Free recipe uses the least amount of butter. It is also the only recipe using dark brown sugar for the filling. When it comes to the toppings, we have 2 recipes using icing and 2 recipes with frosting. Sarah uses butter in her frosting, and Nora doesn't. In addition to dough, filling, and icing, Gaz also has a soaking glaze featured in his recipe along with almond slivers. The methods of making the dough are pretty similar, with the biggest difference being the tanjong or water-based roux in Sarah's recipe. Her recipe is also the only one that calls for softened butter instead of melted. When it comes to assembling the buns, the filling for Gaz's recipe needs to be blended, and in Nora's recipe, the cinnamon and sugar are not mixed together before adding. It was super important to me to present the buns while they are super fresh. So I baked through the night to deliver them to the tasters in the restaurant the next day. For Nora's buns, I started by proofing warm soy milk with yeast and sugar. Once the yeast had foamed up, I added salt, melted butter, and flour. Her recipe has a slight room for error, since you have to add additional flour little by little until the dough starts pulling away from the sides of the bowl. I only needed 1/3 of a cup of extra flour. But I was also very generous with the flour I used for kneading, since the dough was quite sticky. I ended up using another 1/4 cup of flour while kneading. When the dough had risen to double its size, I rolled it out and spread the softened butter. Intuitively, I wanted to mix the sugar with cinnamon so both could be sprinkled at the same time, but here I'm following the recipe to the T. I'll be using the same baking tray for all 4 recipes, and everything that doesn't fit will go into small trays that I will keep for myself. For this recipe, I used 4 extra mini trays. Make It Dairy-Free recipe also starts by proofing warm soy milk with yeast and sugar. But in this case, we only need a teaspoon instead of all the sugar. To the proofed yeast, I'm adding salt, vanilla, the rest of the sugar, and melted butter. The next step is adding the milk mixture to the flour. The dough was quite wet, but it didn't stick too much and was easy to knead. The dough rose beautifully and was very fluffy. Initially, I thought there might not be enough butter to spread evenly since the recipe only calls for 2 tablespoons, but there was just enough. I'm using my knife to measure the width before cutting the pieces for all recipes to keep them uniform, but since the dough weights are different, the log sizes vary. For Nora, I could fit 9 buns into the tray. Here I have 12. Sarah's dough recipe is a bit different from the rest since we have to make the water roux. It takes approximately 10 minutes to make the roux and it has to be stirred constantly. While that is going, I'm proofing the yeast in warm milk. When the yeast is bubbly, we can add aquafaba, sugar, the roux, and softened butter and mix to break apart the roux. Then we can add salt and flour. Sarah's dough came together easily and pulled away from the sides right away. In the beginning, the dough was quite sticky, but it was not difficult to knead and I didn't have to use a lot of flour. And just like the previous two, the dough rose nicely. For this one, I could fit 12 buns into the baking tray and had 3 little ones on the side. The buns were super fluffy even before the second rising. Finally, we have Gaz Oakley's dough. The first step is to melt butter into the soy milk. While that's going, I'm combining flour, powdered sugar, and cornstarch. Then I added the yeast to the warm milk and butter mixture and let it proof. When the yeast is bubbly, it's time to add the milk to the dry ingredients. The dough was sticky but came together easily. It was very easy to knead. While the dough was rising, I blended the filling and it smelled absolutely divine. Once doubled in size, I rolled out the dough. The filling was a little tricky to spread since it's quite thick, but eventually I managed to spread it evenly. After placing the rolls in the tray, I let them rise. Meanwhile, I made the glaze. I added half of the glaze before baking and the rest along with almond slivers 10 minutes before pulling the rolls from the oven. For all 4 recipes, I took the small trays out of the oven before the big one, since the small ones were done sooner. There were no issues while baking, but I did use a foil cover for the last 5 minutes for the big trays of all recipes, since my oven tends to burn the top of baked goods regardless of the temperature. Gaz Oakley's icing was very thin. Make It Dairy-Free had a slightly thicker icing, but I would have added less milk in both to make it less runny. But of course, I went with the proportions from the recipes. Nora's frosting was super easy to make and I love the consistency. For Sarah's recipe, I had to beat softened butter with the cream cheese before adding sugar, salt, and vanilla. The temperature of the butter and cream cheese has to be just right for them to mix properly, but it was also very easy to make. The final result was a little bit runnier than Nora's. Once I had all the buns, icings, and frostings ready, I glazed all the buns before packing them and taking them to the restaurant. I was super proud of the result, but a little worried since I couldn't be 100% sure that the middle ones were perfectly cooked. Also, I have to say, this was a very tricky baking challenge since working with yeast is way more time sensitive than baking powder, for example. Ideally, I would have wanted to glaze the buns just before serving in the restaurant, but I felt very conscious about occupying the pass of a Michelin restaurant for longer than necessary. The chef cut them into smaller pieces so people could have a little bite of each. I collected the votes from all of the kitchen staff as well as the front of the house, and then I went home to sleep for a little bit before doing a taste test myself. I hope the fire crackling in the background is not too distracting, but I feel like cinnamon buns call for something really cozy. The order here is Sarah's Vegan Kitchen, Make It Dairy Free, Nora Cooks, and Gaz Oakley. I am not doing the tasting blind because I know which one is which. I've already tasted them. And obviously, I wouldn't be able to hide from myself. Like, for example, this one has almond slithers on top, and the glazes are very recognizable and different. But the tasters did have the blind tasting with just letters written on the boxes. So like that, we have some blind opinions, and then we also have my tasting notes. Let's start with Sarah's Vegan Kitchen. The bun is really fluffy. The layers are not very thick, but just thick enough to have the perfect balance between the cinnamon and the dough. I like the frosting. This one was a bit harder to make because it combines both vegan cream cheese and vegan butter. The cinnamon flavor is subtle, but it is very, very noticeable, and I wouldn't want it any other way. It is super fluffy. The frosting is nice. Even though comparing just the frosting, I have to say I prefer Nora's frosting more. And I prefer frosting over icing. But, you know, even without anything on top, these are delicious. The ratio between the filling and the dough is very balanced. The frosting is creamy and smooth. And if you like a richer frosting, then this is the one. An interesting thing, when I brought the buns to the restaurant this time, most of the people in the restaurant didn't know me. So they were not aware that it is a vegan tasting. And that is something I really, really enjoy doing when I do these tastings. I never tell people that the pastries are vegan because, you know, people come in with this assumption immediately when you tell them, oh, these are vegan. They are looking for the vegan flavor. But the truth is, after the tasting, when I revealed that everything is 100% plant-based, people were coming up to me and telling me, really? I would have never been able to tell. So that says a lot about these buns. And now I'm going to taste the next one, which is Make It Dairy Free. The icing on the Make It Dairy Free bun is much thicker than the icing on Gaz's bun. This one feels way more cinnamony and more fragile. So for Sarah's bun, I can say that it's a very fluffy bun with a rich frosting on top. And in this one, we have these nice thin layers and a very strong cinnamon flavor. And the layers are super soft. They pull apart easily. It is very fluffy, but since the layers are thinner, the fluffiness is less noticeable and there's more fragility to the bite. For Nora Cooks, I can say that the dough is the most noticeable in this one. It's not doughy, but it is chewier in a good way. There's more dough. The Make It Dairy Free bun has really fragile, tiny layers, and they kind of pull apart very easily. And this one is the big fluffy bun. The frosting, I love the frosting. It's my favorite one out of all four. If I compare the glazes and the frostings, it is also the frosting that stays on the best. But for the bun itself, there's maybe a little bit less cinnamon flavor and more of the dough, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But so far, I prefer the Make It Dairy-Free bun because of the nice slim layers that it has. This one is really fluffy. This one is definitely the one that stands out. The cherries, the almond butter in the filling. If you want a different cinnamon bun, this is definitely the one to go with. Also the maple syrup, very excited for this one. There is an amazing acidity coming from the dried cherries, and it gives another layer to the bun. It is very flavorful. The filling is something that you could probably just use as a spread, you know, to eat bananas in the breakfast or something like that. When it comes to dough itself, interestingly, it feels a little bit drier, and I didn't expect that. I was sure that this bun is going to have the most moisture in the dough because Gaz adds this maple and butter glaze while baking, but somehow I feel like it's the driest one, and it might have something to do with the filling because dried cherries soak up a little bit of that liquid since they are getting rehydrated while being baked. This was super difficult because all of them are really good, and you have to like nitpick and go down to details. But I'm certain that you could make any of those buns, take them to a party, and everyone would be impressed. I just tasted all four buns again, and I'm considering 4 factors in order to make my choice and pick my favorite. The first is the dough. Then we have the frosting and icing. Then the flavor in general, how it comes together. And the fourth one, obviously, there is the ease of making those because the difficulty of the recipe matters. Let's be real. There are days when you just need to make something quickly and you don't have time for elaborate, complicated recipes, so I have to look at that as well. When it comes to the dough, I really think that the Make It Dairy-Free dough is the softest. Then we have Sarah's Vegan Kitchen, then Nora Cooks, and then Gaz's dough. It's not just the softness, it's also the moisture. It might be that the Make It Dairy-Free dough comes across as the softest and the one with the most moisture, purely because the layers are thinner and there is the fragility to the bun because of those many layers, versus, for example, Nora's bun is really big and fluffy. But for my palate personally, Make It Dairy-Free one feels like the softest one, which is what you're looking for normally in a bun. So that's about the dough. Now, when it comes to the frosting and icing, I prefer Nora's frosting the most. This is the one I will use next time when I make buns, regardless of which recipe I choose for the bun itself. I do like a good icing, but for cinnamon buns, somehow I feel like the frosting is giving more flavor than purely just the icing. But even with just the icing, the Make It Dairy-Free bun is really flavorful. When it comes to the flavor in general, I do love the cherry filling and Gaz Oakley's bun. The cherries give this tart, light acidity, which is just delicious. A lot of people would come to you asking you, what's in the bun? What's the amazing flavor? I might actually try making the Make It Dairy-Free dough with Gaz's filling and Nora's frosting. You're free to experiment and take the best from all these amazing buns. The butter frosting is also good. It was just a bit harder to make. And in general, when it comes to the ease of the recipe, how easy it was to make the recipes, this one For the dough, we had the roux, so it was a bit harder to make the dough because had to like stir and stand next to the stove by mixing the flour with the water to make this paste. But I think it's worth it because the bun is fluffy, it's delicious, the recipe is great. It's just a little harder to make the dough maybe. And for Gaz, you have a dirty blender. While the filling is excellent, but if you want less dishes to do, probably not this recipe because it has a lot of components. It has the glaze, it has the filling that you have to blend, and then, well, frosting, that's for all of those, not frosting, but icing, but just the fact that you have to wash a blender, maybe a little bit harder. The middle, Nora and Make It Dairy-Free recipes, they are easier to make. There is no blender and no action on the stovetop other than melting some butter, which can be done in a microwave. So I would say that when it comes to the ease, definitely these two. And if I have to pick one, just one recipe with no changes, no mixing and matching, I would go for Make It Dairy-Free. But if I'm allowed to mix and match and, flirt with all the recipes a little bit, then I would probably make the Make It Dairy-Free dough with Gaz Oakley's filling and Nora's frosting. So there you go. That is my choice. Now let's look at the thoughts of the tasters who tasted all of these blind and voted for their favorite. 5 people, including the chef of the restaurant, chose Sarah's recipe as their favorite. 3 picked Nora's and 2 went for Make It Dairy-Free buns as their favorites. I got a lot of questions about the cherry filling, but people mentioned preferring classic filling for cinnamon buns, as well as many of them said that they prefer frosting over icing, which might explain the score. For example, my mom had a hard time picking between Gaz's and Nora's recipe, but she eventually went with Nora's because of the frosting. So there you go, to each their own. If you enjoy my vegan bake-offs, please subscribe to the channel and share the video. It really helps the channel a lot. Also, let me know down in the comments what recipes you would like to see compared next. Meanwhile, for something savory, go check out my deep dive on vegan Korean food. I put a ton of work into research and the video is packed with interesting cooking tips. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next video. Bye!